What is up, YouTube? Sanderson977 here today to do Naruto chapter 680 review. Now, this chapter of Naruto was a pretty interesting chapter. We picked up where we left off last week with all of them falling into the lava, and there was certain developments and certain story progression elements that happen that I will in fact discuss later. But first, I'll just start off with a general summary, a general run through, and then I give my thoughts and impressions later on in this Naruto review. Now, we see all of them falling into the lava, as I was saying before from last week. All of them falling into the lava, and Sasuke summons his hawk, Kakashi and Sakura falling, Obito falling. And then we see Kakashi using a kind of makeshift rope, and it was explained by Sasuke that he actually in fact used a scroll, tied it at the end of his kunai, threw it up through one at Obito, and that's how he saved himself, Sakura and Obito from falling into the lava. And then we see Sasuke, right? Sasuke making a remark on, only if they use that kunai to get rid of Obito in the first place, all of this would have happened. So Sasuke again in this chapter throwing insults at Kakashi and the rest of them, right? Even though Sasuke is a quote-unquote good guy, because now he wants to be Hokage, and now he wants to be that very important person in the village, we see that he still have a lot of very dark and shadowy areas of himself. He seems like he doesn't necessarily care much for others, and in this case especially Sakura and Kakashi. So that's a thing to notice about Sasuke. He's quote unquote good because he wants to be a Hokage, but he's not very good or very caring in regards to others, although he wants to be a Hokage. But moving on. Now we see something interesting that was stated by Kakashi, and that thing being is that Kakashi was remarking on how he was kind of surprised that Sasuke was able to use a summoning in a different dimension, right? And the way how it's worded, it was kind of funny, and it was kind of hard for me to really understand what he was trying to say. But when I reread it a couple of times, I realized that it could mean really two things, and those two things are, first of all, it could mean that he's surprised that like how typically in the series thus far we've seen Sasuke use snake summons, right? When for example he was fighting Deidara, that guy with the motes in his hand, and the guy who uses bombs, Deidara. When he was fighting him, back then he summoned Manda, the big snake, to protect himself from the big massive self-destruct explosion that Deidara was trying to use. So typically throughout the series we've seen Sasuke use snake summons, right? Only since recently, since his fight with Itachi, we've seen him begin to use hawk summons. So Kakashi could be remarking over the fact that he is able to use summons from a different dimension, meaning that he can use not just snakes but hawks. It could be that, or the second point, that it could be the fact that they are now in a different dimension. So he's surprised that them being in this different dimension, Sasuke is able to use a summoning, right? That seems to be the other possible alternative. But if I would have to choose, I would go with the first point, that he's surprised that Sasuke in fact can use summons from that he can summon not just snakes but hawks. Typically throughout the Naruto series we just typically see people use one type of summons, whether it be frogs, slugs, etc. But he's able to use snakes and hawks. So we see this dialogue between Sasuke and Naruto, and again showing you how much of a good guy Sasuke is. Sasuke is basically trying to convince Naruto that he should just forget about Kakashi and Sakura and focus on Kaguya, what is the imminent threat in front of them, which is a valid point, which is he is completely right about that. But then Naruto turns it around back on him, saying something that he said back when they were younger, when they had their first mission with Zabuza on that bridge, when Sasuke jumped in front to save Naruto, and Sasuke saying something at the time like, my body just moved on its own. Naruto turned it back around on Sasuke and said that very same thing. So, that was neither here nor there. But after that remark, we see now that Kakashi rope began to burn, and all of them again begins falling into the lava. And what happens? We see Kaguya capitalize on that point, that those sequence of events. She attacks immediately using these kind of, here where she sent out this attack where she used her here as missiles, and she was using her Byakugan at the same time to strike the chakra points. So Sasuke used Susanoo to kind of shield a portion of it from the eagle, but a part of it hit the eagle wing, so the eagle itself began falling, right? And then they all begin falling into lava, and then the scene switches over back to the Edo Tensei Hokages, and we see now that they are now free from Madara staffs, those black chakra rods. So now they begin moving towards the battlefield to where they sense this enormous chakra presence coming from, which is where Kaguya and Naruto and the rest are. Then it switches back, and lo and behold, what do we see? We see Naruto flying. So Naruto is now able to fly. Very interesting. Very interesting. Naruto is able to fly. Well, my remarks on that is, I don't know, call it what you will. Some people might think it's an ass pull. Some might think, there should be no reason why Naruto can fly. What about Sasuke? Well, that's neither here nor there. But no, apparently Naruto is flying. He grabs everyone. He saves them, right? Then he makes a clone, right? And then we see in the next panel, we see Kaguya staring at Naruto, and she gets reminded of her son, the Sage of Six Paths. And in that panel, we see something interesting. And in that panel where we see this Sage of Six Paths sticking out his hand in that kind of memory panel from Kaguya's memory, we see that same sun symbol that Naruto has it in his hand. That's the same symbol we see when the sage stick out that hand. So, right, after I'm finished with my summary, I'll get into a discussion with all these things, but it's there. You can go back and read it yourself. The sage sticks out his hand, and we see a sun symbol, the same symbol that's in Naruto's hand. Then after that, we see the clone begin to attack Kaguya, and they have this skirmish. We see explosions. Then we see Naruto get blown back, and then we see Sasuke come down with Susanoo. So that's the overall summary of a chapter. First start off with the Edo Tensei Hokages. Now, since the Hokages are going to be joining the mix, this could be a pretty interesting turn of events. Not only will Kaguya have to contend with Naruto and Sasuke, but also outside influences from the Edo Tensei Hokages. And remember that they are Edo Tensei, meaning that they cannot die, So it is not like Naruto and Sasuke where they have to be extra careful, not to do certain things that might get themselves killed. These are Edo Tensei Hokages. They literally cannot die. So this is another support for Naruto and Sasuke in bringing down Kaguya. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is that panel where we see the sage sticks out his hand, and we see the sun symbol in his arm. Now, upon seeing that sun symbol, there's two things that got to my mind almost immediately. One is that, again, this is another big hint, as we've seen in the series up till now, another comparison between Naruto and the Sage of Six Paths. There has been a couple of hints throughout the series coming up to this point, and now we see another one where Kaguya herself begins, upon seeing Naruto flying, she gets reminded of her son, the sage, and we see the same again sun symbol in the hand. Now I'm wondering if that sun symbol, if the sage of six paths actually has two symbols, the sun in one hand and the moon in the other hand, or for him it's just one. He really just has a sun symbol. I'm wondering if that's the case, right? It to me, if I had to choose one, I would say that he actually does have both. He has a sun symbol in one hand and the moon symbol in the other hand. That's why he was able to give Naruto and Sasuke their yin and yang chakra abilities, right? But another thing that's questionable and that's perplexing is that up to now we still haven't seen the Sage of Six Paths' brother. We don't know about him. We don't know where he is. We we don't know if he's going to show up sooner or later. It's just mentioned that the sage had that Kaguya in fact had two sons. One was the Sage of Six Paths and the other was his brother. So it seems very um you know it's very weird how a being as powerful as Kaguya, right, has two sons. One who is pretty powerful is the Sage of Six Paths, and the other who you would think would also be pretty powerful, being the brother of the Sage of Six Paths, and yet we haven't heard anything about him. We haven't seen his real significance in the story thus far. Everything is just being excluded about the brother. So I really do hope that Kishimoto at some point brings about some explanation of the sage's brother, where he is, what happened to him, etc. Just some explanation along those lines, because it's surprising in the first place that the sage had a brother, and then to even find out that okay, he has a brother, but to even not know anything about him at all. So but overall, that's my thoughts on this chapter of Naruto. That's my review. This chapter of Naruto was pretty it was a pretty okay chapter. In terms of story progression, it was pretty decent. So it was an okay chapter of Naruto. Certain developments, and Naruto can now fly. So that for me is another big link between Naruto and the Sage of Six Paths. So that's it. That's my review. Please remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Sayonara.